This was a purchase I excitedly made myself wait for. Hey sweetheart, welcome to Nothing But Nuance, a show in which I yap about my opinions or something I've researched, and you enable me by being here. Now, today I am giving you a little book review. I'd like to clarify, I'm just getting back into reading, and honestly reading horror at all. The only thing I've finished before this book that is even slightly considered horror is George Orwell's 1984, and even that, people debate on if it's horror or not. I think it is. I think it is. But that being said, I spent about 12 hours on and off reading Fluids by May Leitz. I believe that's how you... Leitz? I'm not completely sure how to pronounce her last name. I'm very sorry. But I spent about 12 hours with Fluids. And we're going to talk about it. Just to clarify to you that I'm serious that I read it, here are pictures I took of the book, or my friend took of me with the book, while I was reading on the beach. I did actually take it with me. You can check. I said I was going to. I actually did. This book isn't what I wanted it to be, and I'm really upset about that. I wanted to like this book. I was so excited to get this book. I learned about it through a YouTube review that I didn't actually finish because I didn't want spoilers. I was really excited. Just the concept of this toxic lesbian romance where they are willing to kill for each other, that it gets very violent. I heard that, and I didn't really get to hear as far in what they meant by that. And maybe if I had, I wouldn't have picked this up. Because while I really wanted to like this book, I didn't. I really wish I had. This book, I like realistic horror. I do. I think Hush is genuinely very unnerving. I spent that whole movie on the edge of my seat waiting to see how she'd handle it. I think the only movie that's ever actually scared me was Gerald's Game. I cannot think of a single other movie that scared me except for that one, because it is so realistic. But this book is not that type of realistic. The violence in it actually gets very fantastical at points in ways that, like, I can't find the violence scary, I just find it gross. And that's not what I wanted. I really wanted to like this. I love when women get aggressive. I love Ginger Snaps and Jennifer's Body. I think they're great movies. I'm really into them. I was really excited to hear a lot of people thought that the violence in this book was metaphorical, that a lot of it didn't actually happen. It was just used as an explanation of understanding identity. That's something that I write in my free time. I don't know if I'll ever try and get published. I do it for fun. But that's something I'm playing with right now because I'm working on something to sort of deal with my gender identity and, like, trying to kill the part of me that people see as the agreeable gay. Like, stuff like that really interests me. So when I heard about Fluids, I got really excited. I really was. Waited until I thought I had a valid time to get it. Like, this was a purchase I excitedly made myself wait for because I didn't want to have it till I felt I deserved it. I heard we were going to the beach and I expedited the shipping. I paid more to ship this book than I did for the book. I was excited. And I really should have finished that review and at least got to the trigger warnings of it. Because maybe I wouldn't have bought it if I had. And I feel really bad saying that because, you know, art is one of those things that comforts the disturbed, disturbs the comfortable, whatever. But in no world could I see the disturbing parts of this disturbing or comforting me. The disturbing parts of this exist in my real life. I kind of read to escape those, you know? If I wanted to see stuff like what happens in here, I could have Googled any state with trans woman and found articles that look just like it. Maybe that's a spoiler, and I am going to give you those, but I want to warn you before those happen. But this book is a horror in the way that Boys Don't Cry is a horror, and I really wish it hadn't been. I like gore, I do. I think Saw is my favorite franchise. The Collector is a really fun movie. I think you can enjoy gore and violence and it not be a bad thing. I think you can have extreme levels of it and it not be a bad thing. Book, I wouldn't call it a horror, I'd just call it gross. Like, it was just very gross to me. But we're going to get into a synopsis of this, and we'll kind of talk about the writing style, the way the book's set up, and then we'll go talk about spoilers later, but I am going to put trigger warnings on screen for you now. You can decide if you want to stay or not once you see those, and we can circle back. Okay? See you in a minute. Fluids, an extreme horror novel about finding oneself in the midst of violence and madness. Meet Lauren, a regular American girl amid a personality crisis. Meet Delilah, a transgender woman looking for a home in an unaccepting world. When lightning strikes between the two of them, we learn just how far both will go to keep each other, destroy each other, and leave the world to die. What if the person you loved was only looking for shelter? And what if you were just desperate enough to kill for her, even if just for your entertainment? Fluids is a gross love story about toxicity and the divide between those looking to rise like a phoenix from the ashes of their past, and those looking to self-destruct. Now off of that, I feel like you're also getting the Bonnie and Bonnie vibe I was looking for. You don't get a Bonnie and Bonnie vibe. When I read that, I kind of assumed, maybe violence would be against each other, but they're also committing violence against other people in sort of a, I can do that to her, but you can't do that to her sort of way. Sort of Bonnie and Clyde-esque. I kind of assumed they'd be committing crimes together to sort of stay together, and one would obviously be more in it than the other, or something of the sort. This isn't exactly that. Part 1 really does set you up for that. Part 1 makes you think, oh, they're gonna be, hurting each other, but defending each other to other people because of how part 1 ends. No. This book has the same type of gross, edgy vibes as, those doll-kill dead girls can't say no shirts. That's the vibe I got the whole time I was reading this book. This is the same edgy as those groups of people who want to sleep with the Columbine killers. This is not my type of edgy. I like edgy. Hold on. I am covered in pop tops, and I'm wearing a fishnet shirt, and I have colorful hair and black lipstick, and I like edgy. I do. I really do. I like edgy. I like dark. I'm a horror fan. I listen to mainly alternative music. I like when my clothes are weird and sort of off-putting. I've been told more than once I would be a horror apprentice. I like edgy. This just isn't, it's not. This is school shooting joke edgy. But that's what I'm, feeling from it, As I was reading this, there was a point where I went and Googled the author. Because while, yes, the beginning, Lauren's in this sort of baby gay mentality. She's realized she's not pan, but a lesbian. She's sort of trying to figure out what that means for her. All of us went through that. We went through we have to be like a U-hauler. We have to, dress more masculine. Or we have to wear, scissors and Venus symbols everywhere. We all go through that phase of what I'm supposed to be as a queer person. And from that point of this book, I was like, oh, they're both coming into themselves, this is gonna be one of those, toxic first girlfriend to sort of learn who you are sort of things. No. By the time I got to part 2, maybe part 3, because this is split in 3 parts, it's the hunt, play, and devour. That's the name of the 3 parts. By the time I was about halfway through play, I put the book down and I Googled the author because it got to the point I couldn't comprehend this author being anything but a cishet playing out a queer violent fantasy. And to discover the author was not was very shocking to me. And maybe that's just the way I was reading it, but I was feeling like this was just violent against queer people, especially against a trans woman, for the purpose of being able to. I really wish I didn't feel that way. I do also want to clarify, I think this book is really gross. Like, I think a lot of the word choices are really nasty choices. And understand this is a first-person point of view, so that's not necessarily directing on the author, but how she was trying to build the character. But I think the word choices in this are really gross. I think the way a lot of sexual things are described are very nasty. Very nasty. And I'm a bit of a prude myself, I will admit that. But I read some of it out loud to a friend, and even they thought it got really nasty at points. I really hate that Lauren refers to us as tubes. We're all tubes. Our bodies are just tubes. I only want Delilah to be the one to play with my tube. Like, it's nasty. I think it's very vulgar. I think at a point, any of the swears that happen, like, during violence don't matter because we've used them so many times that they just kind of feel like you're seeing the word the or the word a on the page, you know? The word I. Like, they lose their meaning. They don't really have a purpose by the point we're getting to the main points of the violence because they're being used so much. And again, we're trying to character build. Some people do talk like that. I get it. But I don't think either character's point of view was written differently enough that I could easily tell apart the characters. There were multiple points where until I heard the other character's name be said, not as an I, but as a, like, her, I couldn't tell who we were reading from. You spend the first, 4, 5, maybe 7 chapters with Lauren, and then you have Delilah, and then you're back to Lauren, and then it sort of flops back and forth. I think there's a chapter where it, switched halfway through. She doesn't warn you who's speaking. You find that out the further into their talking you are, but, there's multiple points I couldn't tell who I was reading from for a little bit. I had to, really find context clues, and I think if you're doing 2 points of view, and these characters are supposed to be different people in different points in their life with different wants, I shouldn't have to be told whose point of view I'm in to know we've changed point of views, you know? I think Delilah acts more like a different person, but from their points of view, she is so much like Lauren, I couldn't tell where she was. And maybe that's a really harsh criticism, and I don't want to, this was a debut novel. Not novella, I think it counts as a novella, it's 159. But this was a debut. This was a first book, and first books are never going to be perfect, and I don't want to just tear down the author, and I feel like I'm kind of doing that. I just want to clarify, this book doesn't work for me, it's going to work for someone. I'm just not that someone, but I hope you have fun reading it if you liked it. I'm not booing you for liking it. Finishing a book at all is a huge feat, and congratulations to her for finishing 2. I think she has a 3rd one coming out soon. Quite frankly, if I can find reviews on Girlflesh, which is the sophomore novel, it's like a trilogy, but I don't think any of the characters match up. If I can find a review on Girlflesh and think it might be different enough to this, I might read that too. I don't want to just decide this author isn't for me just from stuff like this, but I am letting you, because again, first book ever. But I am letting you know why I didn't like it, so you can be prepared for that. I think the gore in this was very fantastical, and it gets to the point of also just being gross. There's a lot of vomit in this, there's a lot of essay in this, there's a lot of just bodily fluids in ways you don't want. There's a lot of gore that gets to the point that you're pretty sure that wouldn't work. There's 2 separate points that I'm almost completely sure you couldn't do that. And maybe I'm wrong. One of them I could be wrong, but the other one I'm definitely correct on. The gore gets very fantastical in a way that makes it not scary anymore, because you can't imagine that feeling. And once you hit that point of gore, I don't think any of the other gore worked for me either, because I couldn't imagine that feeling. The sexual assault gets very graphic. Even though there's not very intense wording around it, it's very, the wording around it is very upsetting. I'm firmly someone who believes if you need sexual assault to be scary, you're not. I DNF'd it back there because of Bev and her husband. I didn't even get to the points where we're, dealing with her father and Henry Bowers and stuff. I didn't get that far. I might try that one again one day. I think it has enough outside of the essay to still be scary, even though I don't think it is scary. Love it. Love it. We're talking about it a lot on the channel this month. I don't find it scary though. But I really wish I had enjoyed Fluids, but it got to the point that this is only a horror if the essay terrifies you. And while that worked to scare me, I think if you need essay for your horror, you kind of failed in writing horror. I don't think anything else of it was extreme outside of the violence, but again, the violence gets very fantastical. I don't view this as a horror. I view this in the same light as Boys Don't Cry, but the difference is Boys Don't Cry was a true story. None of the violence in that was fantastical. And even then, Boys Don't Cry doesn't get labeled as a horror by most people. It is considered a thriller. Maybe. It's considered a drama as its main genre. Which is insane. The 90s would give you the most insane hate crime they can imagine and call it a drama. What was happening in the 90s? They did that with fried green tomatoes, too. What was happening in the 90s? Ugh. But yeah, I think this book was very gross in its wording. I think it got very vulgar. I think most of the characters were very unlikable. Delilah was the only character. Delilah and that poor woman who died because she was married to the wrong guy. Like, those are the only characters I found likable throughout this whole story. I hated everybody else. I wish I had it. One of my favorite tropes is when a character who thinks they're not worth being alive starts fighting to be alive. I was happy we didn't get that trope. I was glad Lauren wanted to be dead. I wanted her to die too. I found her very unlikable. I thought she was one of the worst characters I have ever been given. I hated her. I hated the main character of this book. Delilah is the only thing that kept me coming back. I was very attached to her. My lighting has gotten really bad because it's raining. I'm sorry. But I got very attached to Delilah. I really liked her. And had I not been, I would have DNF'd this book. But I needed to know if she lived. That being said, I have given you a lot of violence here. We are gonna move on to spoilers. We're gonna get into real details of it. If you don't want that, you can go ahead and leave. I thank you for being here if you stayed this long, and I hope you have a good one, baby. But if you are ready for spoilers, let's get into it. The name Fluids comes from how many body fluids are in this book. I do believe that. This book just gets nasty. There are 3 different scenes that I would describe as sexual assault. The funniest part of this book, like, I verbally laughed, is the first time we get Delilah's point of view. Delilah does not like Lauren. At all. At all. It's like, what if the person you loved was only looking for shelter? Like, yeah, okay. But she doesn't even like her, like, non-romantically. She thinks she's pathetic. There is something very interesting to me about the fact that these characters view each other in such similar but different lights. Lauren is like, oh, Delilah is so sad. I need to fix her. I need to save her. I need her. I'm in love with her because I could save her from being so sad. And Delilah is like, Lauren is so sad that it's impossible to find her attractive. And I think those are very interesting concepts to have pressed against each other like that. I think Lauren's awful. I do. I really don't like her. She purposefully sets Delilah up to be assaulted twice. Twice. Both of these times she's claiming Delilah is 10 years younger than she is. She's setting her up as an 18-year-old to men in their 30s to 50s. It's very gross. I knew from the second that she claimed, what was the exact wording? Because again, I'm almost completely sure Delilah introduced herself as a lesbian. And there's a point, I think the exact wording was he could f*** Delilah the way she needs it. Delilah doesn't want to have sex with a man. She doesn't. That's like part of the character, I fear. I know a big part of that is to show us how awful Lauren is and how much Lauren doesn't listen and doesn't care. But it's... that exact moment is when you realize what's gonna happen, and you just have this sinking feeling until it does. You're given this little line from Lauren, if he tries to touch you, I'll cut his head off, and that's when you know for a fact that this character is not going to be safe, this character is going to be assaulted, and there's nothing you can do as a reader to prevent it. I hated it. I really did. I wanted to put the book down, but I was so attached to Delilah, I couldn't look away. And it was very devastating to read through. We're convinced Delilah's dead for a while after that. The man who assaults her is one of those points where you get very fantastical gore. She sort of, like, grabs his hand by, like, Spock fingers and, like, tears it in half. And, like, that would never happen. This man is 58. I don't even think on someone 90, their muscles would be weak enough for that to happen. That would never happen. That's one of those instances where the violence got too fantastical for it to work. Lauren steals his card, because if she can't have Delilah, at least she can have money. So, you know, she doesn't actually love Delilah. That's a big thing she has the whole book, is she keeps falling in and out in love, but she doesn't. She has a sex addiction as a form of SH. That's it. That's all Lauren is. The way she talks about Delilah in multiple points made her feel like a chaser to me. Is so obsessed with talking about Delilah's penis. So obsessed with the concept of sleeping with Delilah, and if Delilah would be into penetration, with Delilah getting her pregnant. Like, it felt very chaser. I really didn't like Lauren. She felt like... a big part of her is why I had to Google who wrote this book. Like, I am very grossed out by Lauren and her language. I'm really grossed out by a lot of this, actually, and I hate that. And then Lauren finds that the card's been shut off, goes back to the hotel. Well, the casino, it's both. It's a casino with a hotel attached. That's your main setting. She goes back and she decides to kill the woman who is married to the man because Delilah threatened it. I honestly don't think Delilah meant it. And maybe I'm giving Delilah too much credit, but, like, I think a lot of the violence she threatens is just her threatening it in the moment because she is in fight or flight mode. I don't hold any of Delilah's violence against her in the way I do Lauren, and maybe I should. Maybe that's wrong of me. But I can't find it in me to be upset with how aggressive she gets when she knows her life's in danger. Lauren is so willing to put her in danger that, like, she has to be violent. And I can't hold that against her. I do believe this is our second of 3 accounts of SA, though, is when Lauren is in the middle of killing this woman. She just randomly starts going down on her. Everything about this scene grossed me out. The fact that it's SA, the fact that she was willing to SA someone at that point. The violence in this is also very fantastical at points. The woman hits her face on a wall and it peels half of it off. How hard would you have to hit a wall for it to rip half your face off? I don't think slipping on the shower floor could do that to you. I really don't. I think that's like car crash level speed you'd have to be at. Again, very fantastical gore. Lauren cuts off this woman's vulva. It's gross. She keeps referring to the way she's bleeding like she's orgasming. It's very nasty. It's very gross. We leave her killing the woman in the bathroom to get back to Delilah, who has turned out to be alive and is in a grave in the back of a casino. Why is this casino just covering up murders? Also, it clarifies there's like 6 graves there. 6 people were murdered in that casino that night and no one was called? Okay. This is the point that people are like, I think a lot of the violence isn't real. I think it's metaphorical. Because what? What are you talking about? But Delilah is missing a hand. It says an arm at one point, and then like, from the wrist, I really can't comprehend where Delilah's arm has been cut off. Because from the way Delilah was describing it, I was assuming, like, up here. But when Lauren's describing it, she's talking about her throwing her arm in the way and that her hand is missing. But it claims most likely it was taken off with a shovel because she moved. Again, I guess we don't know the size of the guy who would have been taking her arm off, but I think it would take a lot of effort for a body that hasn't started decaying yet to take it off with a shovel. I don't know, I've never tried, I don't plan to try, but I feel like that's another point where the gore just gets a little fantastical, and like, that wouldn't happen. But Delilah is stumbling around, she's so much in shock, her body isn't feeling the effects of everything that happened to her the night before. She's not fully sure what her name is. She can't really talk because her vocal cords are a little destroyed from how dehydrated she is and how much she was screaming. And then we go from the weird fetishization of this trans woman into an infantilizing her. Lauren finds her claiming to be a woman old enough to be her mother, and Delilah isn't aware enough of what's happening around her to realize. She changes her name, she takes her to eat, teaches her to talk again. Very infantilized, she takes her to a bath. There's a point for a while Delilah is talking like a toddler would before they take her back to the room where everything happened the night before, and her body can remember what happened. She's terrified, and she doesn't know why she's terrified until a man comes in that Lauren has offered Delilah up to. This is a point where the T-slur gets used a lot. There's another essay scene where I'd argue both the man and Lauren are sexually assaulting Delilah, and I don't think that's a hard argument to make. They end up killing this guy just like they did the guy from before. And then Delilah ends up passing out, I believe. When she wakes up, Lauren has ended her own life beside her and is curled against her body in some sort of attempted Juliet and Juliet situation, as Delilah words it. And again, I love when a character who thinks they have nothing to live for fights for their life. But Lauren was so awful that I could never feel sympathy for her wanting to die. I was agreeing that she should die. So her death was probably my favorite part of the book. This book is just so nasty in its wording and in the way these characters are being dealt with. Delilah is so unsafe this whole book. There's some other gore and stuff I didn't get into, other reviews have gotten into, but this book was genuinely very upsetting to me, and if I wanted to read about a trans woman being assaulted, beaten, and left for dead, I could have looked up any state's news article. I assure you it probably happened once this month. I don't think stuff like this draws light to it. And again, I'm non-binary. I'm not a trans woman. I don't get to talk over trans women. Maybe a lot of trans women did find comfort in seeing something like this, but if I wanted to read something like this, I'd find a news article. I had a really bad time. And I really wish I hadn't. Again, I had been really excited for this book, and it wasn't horror, it was just extreme violence. I could have recreated this in The Sims. I could have had the extreme violence mod and Wicked Whims and recreated this absolute violence in The Sims. And I think that's an awful thing. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think you should do that. Let me clarify, do not recreate this in The Sims. I'm just saying we have the mods that we could. But yeah, the gore in this was just too fantastical for me. The sexual violence was way too heavy for me. This book wasn't for me, and I really wish it had been. But if it was for you, if you did like it, and you think my review was garbage, that's fine. Again, much like I say, acting is an art form, and makeup's an art form. Everything in the creative field is an art form, and it's gonna work for some people and not work for others, and that's okay. But Fluids really didn't work for me, and I really wish it had. And I may give That's another chance. I do plan to keep giving extreme horror a chance. I'm waiting for To Be Devoured to come back in stock now. But I really didn't like Fluids. I wanted a toxic lesbian romance, and what I got was major violence and assault on a trans woman. There's no romance to this. There's not. There's Lauren's one-sided delusions, which don't even come off as she cares about Delilah at all. She's saying she does, but none of her actions do. I didn't like this book. I wanted to and I didn't, and I'm sorry I didn't. But that being said, this was nothing but nuance. Thank you for listening. If this influenced your opinion on Fluids one way or the other, I apologize, I guess, or you're welcome if you were on the fence and you've decided that this was enough that it's too much for you to handle. I'm glad I kept you from possibly putting yourself in a bad situation. That being said, I'll see you next week. You have a good one, baby. Bye-bye.